Okay, we are in our final session of Ezekiel. You can go to Ezekiel chapter 38. Ezekiel chapter 38. I'd like to thank Vince and Sean for helping teach this class. Believe it or not, throughout this 16 hours or 8 weeks of class that we've done this, we have either given you a summation or we've covered every chapter of the book of Ezekiel, except for Ezekiel 38 and 39. And we're going to do that in this session. It's been really exciting to do this book. I don't think I ever thought in my lifetime that I would ever understand the book of Ezekiel. And it's such an awesome thing to really feel that I have a grasp of this, the understanding of this prophet. It's been a blessing to be a part of this, to teach this, and to put this on record to have available for people who'd like to study this. It's really been an awesome privilege. Tonight we're going to go to Ezekiel chapter 38, learn about Gog, who that is, and there's both chapter 38 and 39 cover the same thing. In studying this last time, I was just reading different commentaries, and it was interesting, something that I never really thought of before, and it really doesn't make a big theological difference, but I find it very interesting that 3 commentaries, different things I was looking at, all said the same thing. So I said, when 3 people all agree on something, it makes you wonder. And that is, remember way back in chapter 33, that's when after these 7 years, the people came from exile, and then Ezekiel's mouth was open the night before, and that was in the 12th year. That is the last date given in Ezekiel until you get to chapter 40, and then it's so many years later that he gets the revelation about the future temple. And what these commentaries think is that night, when God opened his mouth and he stayed up all night, that he gave him all the things that we read from 33 through 39 were all given him that revelation that night. And they marked this out because, one, there's no chronological date before that, and there's 6 times in these six specific times in here that you can look at this where it separates it, where it says the word of Yahweh came to me. And those are the 6 divisions of Revelation that these commentaries say that Ezekiel received that night. And I have them up here in the chart, and they're also in your note. 6 prophetic messages of Ezekiel 33:23 through Ezekiel 39:29. In Ezekiel 33:23 to 33 is basically about that the land will be made desolate, and they will know that a prophet is in their midst. Then Ezekiel chapter 34 is basically about the ungodly rulers, but they will one day be replaced by good rulers with David as their prince. Ezekiel 35 and through 36:15 is that God will judge Mount Seir and Edom, and then God will restore the mountains of Israel. The land of Israel is going to get restored. Ezekiel 36:16 through 37:14 is that God will restore the people of Israel to the land. And as we saw last session, there is going to be a resurrection of the dead. Then Ezekiel 37:15 through 28, the nation of Israel will be reunited under one king. But the nation will come back together. And then Ezekiel 38 and 39, both these chapters, is in the last days there will be an invasion of nations. God will deliver his people, and nations will know that Yahweh is God. The fortunes of the house of Israel will be restored. Those are 6 distinct sections. If you go to each of those first verses that are in that, you'll see it says, "Then the word of the Lord came to me." And so it's thought by commentaries that these all were given that night. The next day, the news came of the destruction of Jerusalem and that everything. If that be true, then the night before the news arrived of the destruction of the temple, the destruction of the city, the devastation of the land, Ezekiel received this incredible revelation of hope and of the future restoration and of what was going to be. So, again, I just thought that was neat. I thought that it was interesting. Again, it doesn't change too much as far as theology, but it was an interesting take on the book of Ezekiel. So I brought it up. There you have it. So now let's go to Ezekiel 38. Ezekiel 38, verse 1. It says, "And the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Son of man, set your face toward Gog of the land of Magog, the prince of Rosh, Meshach, and Tubal, and prophesy against him, and say, Thus says the Lord Yahweh, Behold, I am against you, O Gog, prince of Rosh, Meshach, and Tubal. I will turn you about and put hooks into your jaws. I will bring you out and all your army, horses and horsemen, all of them splendidly attired, a great company with buckler and shield, all of them wielding swords, Persia, Ethiopia, and put with them, all of them with shield and helmet, Gomer with all its troops, Beth Togarmah from the remote parts of the north with all its troops, many peoples with you. Be prepared and prepare yourself, you and all your companies that are assembled about you, and be a guard for them." This is a prophecy about this man Gog, this person called Gog, who is, I should say in verse 2, in the NASB it says, the prince of Rosh, Meshach, and Tubal. Other verses in the King James Version will say, the chief prince of Meshach and Tubal. And I think that's probably more accurate. Rosh is a Hebrew word. You heard the term Rosh Hashanah. Rosh means chief day. It's the chief. It's the first. It was the new year. Rosh could mean chief, first. And I think that's more probably what it means, because there is no land or of people called that we know of called Rosh. So I think it really means chief prince, which is the way the King James and some other versions are. Chief prince of Meshach and Tubal. So this Gog is this person that kind of brings all these nations together. Now, I'm going to show you a map, and I don't know, again, this is based on me from what other people have said, from what I can read in the Bible, so take it that way, don't take it much more than that. One thing is interesting on this, it's in these prophecies, especially like this one, it goes back to the names from Genesis. You know, and I got to thinking, well, why is that? Why does it go back to the names of Genesis to tell us about something that's happening in the future? Because in Genesis, it says over the whole face of the earth, this is how it was spread abroad. It gives you a vision of where all these people settled on the earth. So in prophecy, when I read these things, I know the location on the earth where these settlements occurred from the book of Genesis. Now, let me ask you a question. In the last 1,000 years, has Europe changed its geopolitical map? Yeah. Has the Soviet Union changed its geopolitical map? Has the Middle East changed its political? Yes. But these lands from Genesis, when it's marked out by saying, and it gives you these names from Genesis, I may not be right about what the nation is when this comes, but I can get an idea from the geographic location where this will be. When this happens in the end times, who knows who's going to be in charge and what nation will be there and what. But this gives you an idea, and I think that's why we go back to Genesis for these names in prophecy. So just to get an idea, now I've seen some that these nations of Meshach, Gomer, and Tubal are south of the Black Sea, but most of the things I've read indicate that these settlements are north of that north area of the Black Sea. And this is the land of Magog. up in here, this area. These were all descendants of Japheth, settling around the Black Sea area. Today, this is Russia. Where Gomer is on this map is the Ukraine. That little island out there is that Crimea that they were fighting over not too long ago. Tubal is like Georgia that sits right south of Russia. Now that those things are on the Black Sea. Today, the countries of Ukraine, Russia, and Georgia occupy these lands. Other nations, it says here in verse 5, you start seeing other nations are listed that will join with Gog in this last day invasion. And the nations listed in possibly modern day equivalents, Persia. All right, Persia is Iran today. It was the area of Persia. Ethiopia, if that's Ethiopia is south of Egypt today still. Put, many believe Put is Libya, is where the son of, I think it was Ham, one of the descendants of Ham, located. Put, they believe, was around the area of what's today Libya. Gomer is the modern-day Ukraine. Beth Togarmah is that area of eastern Turkey, Armenia, Azerbaijan, up there between the Black Sea and there's another sea over there. Is it the Baltic? But that's Caspian. That's right, the Caspian Sea. And that's Beth Togarmah is over in that area. So this gives you just regions of, and it shows you there's quite a few nations join in on this invasion. So what is this? I can tell you after the 1,000-year reign of Christ in the book of Revelation, it talks about right at the end, Satan's loosed and this Gog and Magog come. There's not a lot of details given about that. I suppose this could be that. One thing I can tell you is this has never occurred yet to this day, historically, this invasion that we're looking at here. It hasn't occurred where all these nations joined together and came into Israel and to fight a battle. That hasn't happened, all right? It could be that at the end of the 1,000 years. I tend to think, because of other things we're going to see how well it fits, that this is in the last days, and we're going to see that actually used a couple times here in the text. In the last days of this age, Ezekiel takes us to the very end of the end of this age before the 1,000-year reign of Christ. And that's what this, I believe, is. It's the end of the end. And so we'll take a look at this, and I'll show you how other sections of Revelation, Scripture fit together with this. So, and the way this is worded is that God summons Gog and these nations to come together. And it says in verse 8, after many days you will be summoned in the latter years. This is last days terminology. In the latter time, in the latter years, you will come into the land that is restored from the sword, whose inhabitants have been gathered from many nations to the mountains of Israel, which had been a continual waste. But its people were brought out from the nations, and they are living securely, all of them. So, in the last days, it says Israel, it's talking about Israel, they are going to be gathered from around the nations of the world, and they will be coming back to the mountains of Israel and settling there in this last time, before this invasion takes place. Verse 9, you will go up, you will come like a storm, you will be like a cloud covering the land, you and all your troops, and many peoples with you. Thus says the Lord Yahweh, it will come about on that day that thoughts will come into your mind, and you will devise an evil plan. And you will say, I will go up against the land of unwalled cities. I will go against those who are at rest, that live securely, all of them living without walls and having no bars or gates, to capture spoil, to seize plunder, to turn your hand against the waste places which are now inhabited, and against the people who are gathered from the nations, who have acquired cattle and goods, who live at the center of the world. Sheba Sheba and Dedan, the merchants of Tarshish with all its villages, will say to you, have you come to catch your spoil? Have you assembled your company to seize plunder, to carry away silver and gold, to take away cattle and goods, to capture great spoil? Therefore prophesy, Son of man, and say to Gog, thus says the Lord Yahweh, on that day, when my people Israel are living securely, will you not know it? You will come from the place out of the remote parts of the north, you and many peoples with you, all of them riding on horses, a great assembly and a mighty army. You will come up against my people Israel like a cloud to cover the land. It will come about in the last days. Again, this is we're talking about in the last days. It will come about in the last days that I will bring you against my land, so that the nations may know me, when I am sanctified through you before their eyes, O Gog. Thus says the Lord Yahweh, are you the one of whom I spoke in former days through my servant the prophets of Israel, who prophesied in those days for many years that I would bring you against them? So this is to a future person. This prophecy is directed to somebody. They may be in the world right now. They may not even be born yet. But this Gog has a prophecy waiting for him. That God is going to call him. He's going to take him like a hook and bring him into the land. And these other nations with him. So that he, Yahweh, will be glorified in the sight of all the nations. God's going to do this. He's going to make this happen. Turn to Revelation. You can keep a finger here. Turn to Revelation chapter 16. I think what we're talking about here is what we refer to as the Battle of Armageddon. The last great battle in the world, when these nations are brought in. It says God will summon these nations. It says he'll put hooks in their mouth. It's like he's fishing. You know, you see if they take the bait. You know what I mean? God's going to bait them. He's going to bring them in. He's going to bring these nations in to his land in the last days. How's he going to do it? Revelation actually gives you a little bit of the how of this working. Revelation 16, verse 12. It says, in the sixth angel, this is in the very last bowls of God's wrath on the earth. This is the sixth one, the sixth of the seventh. So we're right at the end here. The sixth angel poured out his bowl on the great river, the river Euphrates, and its water was dried up so that way would be prepared for the kings from the east. On this map, that Euphrates River goes right up. It goes right way down here, and it goes right up through here. So for these nations to come down from here, they would cross the Euphrates River up here in northern Syria. Or if they came from Persia this way, they'd have to cross the Euphrates. What God says is, I'm going to dry up the Euphrates so these nations can come in. Because one of the biggest things in a military battle is trying to cross a river. And he's going to dry it up, making the way for this invasion. And then it says in verse 13, and I saw coming out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet, 3 unclean spirits like frogs. For these are spirits of demons, performing signs, look at this, which go out to the kings of the whole world to gather them together for the war of the great day of God the Almighty. These spirits, now I don't understand how this works, or how God utilizes the spirit realm, but I know he does it. I've seen it in the book of Kings, right, where He put lying spirits into the mouths of the prophets. They spoke to the king, and then that lying spirits caused the king to do something that really wasn't going to be to his benefit. I know with Pharaoh, he said, I'll harden his heart. It's like he knew how to push his buttons. God, God I don't think controls people, but God knows what makes people tick. He's wise. He's wiser than all of us. He's wiser than every king. He's wiser than all the nations. He's wiser than all the politicians. He's wiser than all the leaders of the world. And he's wiser than the demons and the devil spirits. And he is so wise, he can cause he can cause what he wants to have happen. And here, in Ezekiel, he says, I'm going to draw you like hooks. Here it says these demons are going to go out to these kings and cause them to want to come into the land for this final battle. And it says, behold, I am coming like a thief. This is that thief. I'm coming like a thief. Blessed is the one who stays awake and keeps his clothes, so that he will not walk about naked, and men will not see his shame. Verse 16, and they gathered them together to the place which in Hebrew is called Armageddon. It's this huge field in northern Israel. There's a mountain on one end, and it's the valley of Jezreel, which is huge field. And what it says is all these nations are going to come together there to battle. God's going to bring this to pass. However he does it, he's God. And he's wise. So, in this sixth bowl judgment, the nations of the world are summoned to war for the Battle of Armageddon. This is going to be a massive army, a massive amount of army that will invade the land of Israel, the center of the world. Remember? The center of the world. It's going to invade this area, and it says it's going to be like a cloud to cover the land. Sometime, if you're really interested in studying this final battle, read the book of Joel. Really, and I was reading this the other day, the book of Joel really is primarily about this final age of the world. And in Joel, it talks about locusts, that they're going to come on the land like locusts. You ever seen like a swarm of locusts? It looks like a cloud, right? And that's this, you're going to come into the land like a cloud. These massive armies and troops are all going to converge. You got these guys from the south, from the east, and what's not listed in these things are what we think is the beast and his kingdom, which will be over Israel. And that beast, they come up against him. Many think that this is an ancient called Babylon that will rise up and take over. I don't know all that, but you get the idea that these are armies coming up. There's another nation there. This is a world war, the final world war, all coming together here at Armageddon, in the center of the world. And I think that's what we have in Ezekiel. Now go back to, Ezekiel 38. We'll be coming back to Revelation too if you want to keep a finger there. Ezekiel 38. And we'll go on, verse 18. So here he summons these nations to come to Israel to invade the land. Verse 18, it says, it will come about on that day when God comes against the land of Israel, declares the Lord Yahweh, that my fury will mount up in my anger, in my zeal and in my blazing wrath. I declare on that day there will surely be a great earthquake in the land of Israel. At this day, when these nations, they are all coming together, there's going to be a great earthquake. The fish of the sea, the birds of the heavens, the beasts of the field, all the creeping things that creep on the earth, all the men who are on the face of the earth will shake at my presence. The mountains also will be thrown down. The steep pathways will collapse, and every wall will fall to the ground. There's going to be an earthquake. The mountains fall down. The walls fall down of cities. It's this great earthquake. I will call for a sword against him on all my mountains, declares the Lord Yahweh. Every man's sword will be against his brother. So you're going to have this war, and then they're going to start fighting each other. Remember that didn't happen in one of the book of Kings one time? Where there was such confusion, they all started fighting each other. Here you got all these nations, who's on whose side? They're going to just annihilate each other with the sword here in the center of the world. With pestilence and with blood, they're going to get sick. There's going to be sickness, disease. I will enter into judgment with him. I will rain on him and on his troops and on the many people who are with him, a torrential rain with hailstones, fire and brimstone. I will magnify myself, sanctify myself, and make myself known in the sight of many nations, and they will know that I am Yahweh. God, this is the final battle. This is the end of the end. And Ezekiel's given this vision. Look at Revelation chapter 16. See how these things fit together. Revelation 16. As we had in the first part of Ezekiel 38, they are gathered together for this battle in the center of the world at Armageddon. And then in verse 17, and there in Ezekiel, we saw the wrath of God poured out. You have the same thing here in Revelation. Same wrath, just a little different details, but it's about the same time period. Revelation 16, verse 17, and the seventh angel poured out his bowl upon the air, and a loud voice came out of the temple of the throne saying, it is done, verse 18. And there were flashes of lightning, and sounds and peals of thunder, and there was a great earthquake, such as there had not been since man came to be upon the earth. So great an earthquake was it, and so mighty. You see how that fits with Ezekiel? There's going to be an earthquake, and it's going to shake. The city was split into three parts. The cities of the nations fell. Remember, the walls fall down. Babylon the Great was remembered before God to give her cup of the wine of his fierce wrath. Every island fled away, and the mountains were not found. Which is what we just saw. The mountains are coming down. The walls of cities are coming down. The earthquake is going to be the greatest earthquake in the history of humanity. It's going to get people's attention. And look at this. They talked about, in Ezekiel, he talked about that there's going to be some hailstones, right? Well, look at this. It gives you a little more description of these. And huge hailstones, verse 21, about 100 pounds each. Can you imagine getting hit by a bowling ball falling out of the sky? What's a bowling ball, 16 pounds? These are hailstones that are going to be 100 pounds each coming out of the sky. Came down on heaven upon men, and men blasphemed God because of the plagues of hail, because its plague was extremely severe. I'd say so. This is what Ezekiel's talking about. It's the same. You see, it's the same invasion here in the world. Go back to Ezekiel. Ezekiel chapter 39. This is the wrath of God. In the book of Revelation, these 7 bowls represent the final wrath of God that's poured out on the world. And this is the end. This is the end of it. Ezekiel 39, now he goes on, verse 1. And you, son of man, prophesy against Gog. We're going to continue here, Gog. And say, thus says the Lord Yahweh, behold, I am against you, O Gog, chief prince of Meshach and Tubal, and I will turn you around. I will drive you on, take you up from the remotest parts of the north, and bring you against the mountains of Israel. I'm turning you around. You're coming down to my country. It's like a military strategy where you draw the enemy in to the place where they're going to get beat. Because you draw them into the land, and that's what he's going to draw these nations in his military plan. I will strike your bow from your left hand and dash down your arrows from your right hand. You will fall on the mountains of Israel, you and all your troops, and the peoples who are with you. I will give you as food to every kind of predatory bird and beasts of the field. You will fall on the open field, for it is I who have spoken, declares the Lord Yahweh. And I will send fire upon Magog and those who inhabit the coastlands in safety, and they will know that I am Yahweh. My holy name I will make known in the midst of my people Israel, and I will not let my holy name be profaned anymore. And the nations will know that I am Yahweh, the Holy One in Israel. Behold, it is coming, and it shall be done, declares the Lord Yahweh. That is the day which I have spoken. I love the way God says it. Listen, I said it, it's going to be done. Now, let me remind you, Ezekiel never missed it in what he prophesied. Everything he said that was going to come to pass up to the time of Jerusalem, it happened. So you know what? This is going to happen. Whether people like it or whether they don't like it, or they think we're just, you're just talking, we're just speaking to the wind. No, this is going to happen because God said it. It will be done. Okay. Verse 9. Then those who inhabit the cities of Israel will go out. Look at this. After this destruction, and they're just finally destroyed. They're killed. They kill each other. They're killed by the earthquake. They're killed by hailstorms. They're killed by fire. And they've got dead bodies all over the place. You got weapons. And can you just see the carnage left over from war where everybody's annihilated? Just picture it. All the tanks and the guns and whatever they have in military, planes shot down. Everything just spread all over the land of Israel. All these weapons of warfare just left because all the people are dead or really fled. And you got all this warfare around. Then those who inhabit the cities of Israel, the Israelites that are there, will go out and they'll make fires with the weapons and burn them. Both shields and bucklers, bows and arrows, war clubs and spears. For 7 years they will make fires of them. They're going to have a fire that lasts for 7 years, and the fuel for the fire are the weapons of warfare from this battle. That's a lot of warfare. And they're going to burn it here in Israel. They're going to burn all the weapons down. They will take wood from the field or gather firewood. They will not take wood from the field or gather firewood from the forest, for they will make fires with the weapons. And they will take spoil of those who despoiled them and seize the plunder of those who plundered them, declares the Lord Yahweh. On that day, verse 11, I will give Gog a burial ground there in Israel, the valley of those who pass by the east of the sea, and it will block all those who pass by. So they will bury Gog there with all his horde, and they will call it the valley of Hamon Gog. He's going to get a valley named after him. For 7 months, 7 months, the house of Israel will be burying them in order to cleanse the land. You ever seen that after a battle where they drag the dead bodies into a valley and throw them? Well, they're going to do it for 7 months of the carnage left from this war and drag them and put them in this valley of here at the end of this battle. Verse 13, even all the people of the land will bury them, and it will be to their renown on that day that I glorify myself, declares the Lord Yahweh. They will set apart men who will constantly pass through the land, burying those who were passing through, even those left on the surface of the ground in order to cleanse it. At the end of 7 months they will make a search. As those who pass through the land anyone sees a man's bone, that he will set up a marker by it until the barriers have buried it in the valley of Gog. And even so, the name of the city will be Hamonah, so they will cleanse the land. So they're going to say, the people of Israel, they're going to say, oh, I found some bones over there by that tree. And then the guys who bury it will go get it and take it. Whew. Something, huh? Gog and his troops will fall on the mountains of Israel. God will send fire upon Magog. This is Yahweh's day. It's coming, it shall be done. That the nations will know that God is Yahweh, the Holy One in Israel. The people of Israel will make fires using the weapons of warfare as fuel. And this will last for 7 years. All the slain will be buried in a great valley to be called the Valley of Gog, which means the multitude of Gog, the people that were battled here. Now, verse 17. As for you, son of man, thus says the Lord Yahweh, speak to every kind of bird and to every beast of the field. Assemble, come, gather from every side to my sacrifice, which I'm going to sacrifice to you, as a great sacrifice on the mountains of Israel, that you may eat flesh and drink blood. You will eat the flesh of mighty men and drink the blood of princes of the earth, as though they were rams, lambs, goats, bulls, all of them fatlings of Bashan. You will eat fat until you are glutted, and drink blood until you are drunk. From my sacrifice, which I have sacrificed for you, you will be glutted at my table with horses and charioteers, with mighty men and all the men of war, declares the Lord Yahweh. From this carnage of the battle, God is going to give a feast to the birds of the field and to the beasts, the predatory birds, the vultures, the eagles, all the birds. I don't know, maybe all the birds. He's said, I'm going to have a feast for the birds and the beasts of the field. He's given them a supper. It's supper time, birdies. Quite an analogy, huh? This is repeated in Revelation. Look at Revelation. Revelation chapter 19. Now, I think it's pretty interesting that what we read last, what Sean shared last, was the resurrection from the dead. If Revelation sits chronologically as Ezekiel sits chronologically, and if in the New Testament where it says that the dead shall be raised at the last trump, the dead shall be raised incorruptible. Those in Christ will be raised together. The last trump occurs in Revelation chapter 11. I think there's an indication that there's a gathering together where Christ comes down, he raises his church from the dead, they're changed, and I don't know, do they go away somewhere? I'm not sure. I've heard some people say that they gather on Mount Sinai. I've heard others people say we gather on Mount Olivet. I don't know. But while this is going on, Jesus and his church and the believers are raised from the dead, gathered. If that seventh trumpet is the last trump, again, I don't know for sure. That would also fit that it says we're saved from the wrath to come, because that resurrection actually occurs before this final wrath. I don't know. But this I know is going to happen, however it unfolds. Chapter 19 of Revelation, verse 11. This is after this battle. And I saw heaven open, and behold, a white horse, and he who sat on it is called Faithful, True, and Righteous, his judges and wages war. His eyes are a flame of fire, and on his head many diadems, and he has a name written on which no one knows except himself. He is clothed with a robe dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of God. And the armies which are in heaven, clothed in fine linen, white and clean, were following him on white horses. And from his mouth comes a sharp sword, so that with it he may strike down the nations. There's another verse that says out of his mouth will come fire. That might be, Ezekiel said that this final people are going to be destroyed with fire. Here, fire comes out of his mouth. He will rule them with a rod of iron. His treads the winepress and fierce wrath of God the Almighty. And on his robe and on his thigh he has a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Verse 17, and I saw an angel standing in the sun, and he cried with a loud voice, similar to what we just saw in Ezekiel, saying to all the birds which fly in mid-heaven, come, birdies, come, assemble for the great supper of God, so that you may eat the flesh of kings, and the flesh of commanders, and the flesh of the mighty men, and the flesh of horses, and those who sit on them, and the flesh of all men, both free men and slaves, and small and great. And I saw the beast and the kings of the earth and their armies assembled to make war against him who sat on the horse and against his army. So they're coming up not only against each other, against Israel, they're coming up against Jesus and his army. It ain't going to do too well. They're not going to make it. Verse 20, and the beast was seized, with him the false prophet, which performed signs by which he deceived those and these were thrown alive into the lake of fire which burns with brimstone. The rest were killed with the sword which came from the mouth of him who sat on the horse, and all the birds were filled with their flesh, which is what we have in Ezekiel. So that's the end. That's it. Next chapter, Jesus starts taking rule in the 1,000-year reign of Christ. This is the last, what's the end of the world? That's the end of the world. Ezekiel gives us, or this age. When I say the end of the world, I'm talking about the end of this age. That's it. That's how it's going to end. This is how it's going down. And Ezekiel gives it to us in pretty clear language of what's going to happen in the end. And this is the end of this world. And then Jesus begins to rule in the millennial reign. And all the people that are left will come under subjection of the King of Kings. And all the nations will subdue to him. He'll be a righteous king. The dead are raised, and then they become the sons of God who rule in the earth. It's pretty amazing stuff. Back to Ezekiel. We got to close out Ezekiel 39. Ezekiel 39. Ezekiel 39, verse 21. After this is over with, the birds have eaten, and then the bones are buried. All the tools of warfare are melted down for 7 years. And then God says in verse 21, and I will set my glory among the nations. God's glory. Remember that glory we saw in the first session? God's glory will be set among the nations of the world. And all nations will see my judgment, which I have executed in my hand, which I have laid on them. And the house of Israel will know that I am Yahweh, their God, from that day onward. From that day onward, no more doubting who's God. The nations will know that the house of Israel went into exile for their iniquity, because they acted treacherously against me, and I hid my face from them. So I gave them into the hand of their adversaries, and all of them that fell by the sword. According to their uncleanness and according to their transgressions, I dealt with them, and I hid my face from them. Therefore, thus says the Lord Yahweh, now, that's over with, now I will restore the fortunes of Jacob, and have mercy on the whole house of Israel. And I will be jealous for my holy name. They will forget their disgrace and all their treachery which they perpetrated against me, when they lived securely on their own land with no one to make them afraid. When I bring them back from the people and gather them from the lands of their enemies, then I will be sanctified through them in the sight of many nations. Then they will know that I am Yahweh their God, because I have made them go into exile among the nations, and then gathered them again to their own land, and I will leave none of them there any longer. I will not hide my face from them any longer, for I will have poured out my spirit on the house of Israel, declares the Lord Yahweh. The Israel's fortune is going to be restored. Our fortune is going to be restored. The world is going to be restored. Life is going to be restored. The relationship with God is going to be restored. Peace, righteousness, justice is going to be restored. It's a restoration that is going to take place. And here he gives us this great picture of the last days. Now, these aren't in your notes, but I thought I would like to close with some of these New Testament verses. Romans chapter 13. You know, I don't know where we are in the history of this thing. I don't know. It's been over 2,000 years since Jesus was here. But I tell you what, there's things happening that are undeniable when it comes to biblical prophecy. I mean, Israel is a nation again. That's been over 2,000 years. And Israel is a nation again. And when I went to visit Bill and Marianne, we went to Israel a few years ago, and they were coming, they were gathering to Israel from all around the world. Our guide was from Colombia, South America, and he decided he felt compelled to come back to Israel. I met people from Russia who had moved back to the land of Israel because they felt that the mayor we met at Shiloh, he was from Brooklyn, New York, said he grew up a Jew. I asked him, I said, why'd you come back here? He said, because I read the Bible, and this is where I'm supposed to be. I mean, I thought that was a pretty good answer, coming from a Jew. That they are drawn and they are settling in the mountains of this land which had sat waste and desolate. They are now living there. They have settlements there. They're prosperous. They have an army. I mean, it's a real deal. Is that this gathering of the nations? I don't know. Why is the Middle East always in the news? It always is. Well, this is where it's all going to go down. This is where it's going to happen. Why is Russia and Ukraine always in the news these days? Well, I don't know. But it's something that you see evidence of biblical truths coming together. Maybe we're hundreds of years out yet. Maybe all the nations that we see now are all going to be mixed around there. But as far as looking for things on the earth, I would have to be a little blind and naive not to say, there's something here. I'd have to be a little not wanting to accept the things that I see. That, this world's going down. I mean, is the world getting evil? Yeah. What's this ISIS thing? What is that? I don't know. It just happens to be right in the middle of the area that's between Syria and Iraq, the area of the land of Shinar, Babylon area. I mean, these things are real. This isn't a joke. This isn't a game. This is real. This is happening right now. So, does it have my attention? Yeah. Do I put my trust in it? No. What it does is it makes me say, you know what? I want to live for this. I want to live for this truth. I want to live because Ezekiel said so. And he's a prophet of Yahweh. And everything he said, it came to pass. And so I know this is going to happen. I don't know if it's going to happen in my lifetime, but I know it's going to happen. And to be honest with you, it wouldn't take much to click the switch in the world today for this to happen. It doesn't take much for people to get persuaded to do stupid things real fast, if you haven't noticed. So I think we need to live with a look what it says. Romans 13. Verse 11, do this, knowing the time, that it's already the hour for you to awaken from sleep. For now salvation is nearer for us than when we believed. Wake up. Wake up. Because you know what? Today's a day closer to the end. Today's a day closer to Jesus Christ coming back. Today's a day closer to when that resurrection is going to take place. Wake up. The night is almost gone, the day is near. Therefore, let us lay aside the deeds of darkness and put on the armor of light. Let us behave properly as in the day, not in carousing and drunkenness, not in sexual promiscuity and sensuality, not in strife and jealousy, but put on the Lord Jesus Christ and make no provision for the flesh in regard to its lusts. What do I do in light of such information? That's what I do. I live a holy life. I live for my Lord Jesus Christ. I put on the Lord Jesus Christ, and I don't make provision for the flesh. I live for this day that's coming, because this is real. A lot of things in this world, I don't know what's happening, but this is real. This is really true. 1 Thessalonians. I think a verse we're very familiar with. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 13. It says, "But we do not want you to be uninformed, brethren, about those who are asleep, that you will not grieve as do the rest who have no hope. For if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so God will bring with him those who have fallen asleep in Jesus." That Ezekiel record is going to happen. They're going to be raised from the dead. "For this we say to you by the word of the Lord, that we who are alive and remain shall not, until the coming of the Lord, will not precede those who have fallen asleep. For the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, with the trump of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. Then we who are alive and remain will be caught together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so shall we always be with the Lord. Wherefore comfort one another with these words." Now, verse chapter 5, it continues. "As the times and the epochs, brethren," the times this is going to happen, the epochs, the ages, you don't have any need of anything to be written to you. I don't got to write to you saying, the time is coming, the time is coming, the time is coming. I don't need to tell you that. For yourselves know full well that the day of the Lord is going to come. Just like a thief in the night. It's going to come like a thief in the night. While they are saying peace and safety, and I don't know what's going to go down. Maybe the world's going to make Israel feel like, oh, everything's happy. We're all hunky-dory. Let's sing kumbaya. Everybody's going to be saying, peace and happy. Look how wonderful it is. It's so nice to be in this world. Yay! Then destruction will come upon them suddenly like labor pains upon a woman with child, and they will not escape. But you, brethren, are not in darkness. We don't have to be in darkness to what's going on. That day would overtake you like a thief. For we are sons of light and sons of day. We are not of night or of darkness. So let us not sleep as others do, but let us be alert and sober. For those who sleep, sleep in the night, and those who drunk, get drunk at night. But we are of the day. Let us be sober. Put on the breastplate of faith and love, a helmet, the hope of salvation. For God has not destined us for wrath, but for obtaining salvation through our Lord Jesus Christ, who died for us, so that whether we are awake, whether we die, or we fall asleep, we will live together. That Ezekiel prophecy is to us, as well as to the nation of Israel. Therefore, encourage one another and build up one another just as you are doing. Ezekiel gets me excited, man. What a great book, huh? What great truth that was given to this man over 2,500 years ago. And he's got a little word out there for someone that maybe is in the world now, or maybe they're not yet born, who Ezekiel is told to call Gog. And that's what's going to happen. Heavenly Father, thank you for your word. God, thank you for the great, awesome privilege it has been to study this amazing book of Ezekiel. God, what an inspiration, what hope, what great truth for us to take into our lives. And God, is so often that is stated that you declared to the prophet to speak over and over and over and over again. Oh, Lord, let us know that you are Yahweh. God, help us shout it from the rooftops. Help us declare it in our life. Help our lives be a glory to you, that our lives would be an honor to you and to your praise and to your glory, that people would know that you are the one true God. Thank you so much for this time together. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.